Alright, well, let's get things started with Eden Lake from 2008. So we've got Jenny and Steve. They head to a lake to spend a peaceful, romantic weekend together. However, a group of undisciplined teenagers ruin their weekend with continuous pranks, and it eventually escalates into something a whole lot worse and more violent and deadly. Okay, so this is a movie, I've seen this movie quite a few times now. I remember seeing it roughly around the time it came out. I've had it on Blu-ray since then, pretty much. And overall, I think it is a very good movie, but it's also a very tough movie.
Yeah.
There's just so many scenes in this movie that are just so hard to endure. Like, there's torture scenes, there's a scene like where she's running away and she's runs onto this spike in the ground. You know, they have to face with being possibly being burnt alive, and all these kind of things that happen in the movie. And to be honest, it's a movie that hardly ever lets up. Just when you think things are going to get better, it just takes two steps backwards. Yeah, it's just such a tough movie to endure. Before I get into more details about it, though, what are your general thoughts?
Yeah,
on this?
I pretty much feel the same. It's a well-made movie. Everything in the movie looks nice, fantastic performances. It's not the easiest movie to enjoy. It's a somewhat harrowing experience. Mainly because I feel like you can't necessarily, at some point during the escalation between the kids and this couple, there's sort of been some point where they took a step back, hey, let's not do this. Probably when the guy went into the kid's house. But it's such a interesting idea because well, they're just kids. I mean, kids are harmless, right? Not so much. I mean, these are some sadistic kids.
They're a bunch of bogan wankers.
They're like straight savage. Like, especially, there's another kid who wants to join the little gang type thing, and well, he doesn't necessarily join, sort of gets fired in a way. But I mean, these kids have like no empathy aside from the kid with the dog. He really likes that dog. So he got a little sympathy from me then, but I mean, talk about a bunch of unlikable kids, and of course, I suspect most of us know the ending, and talk about sort of a gut punch there.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where you just feel like it's one big kick to the balls. There's pretty much no hope in the movie at all. Oh, well, there might be hope, but it always gets squashed.
Yeah, there's a little hope toward the end when she finally gets a ride, but then it's not quite as it seems, and it's just disappointing.
Yeah. So, I guess maybe I'll just try and work my way through this movie and just highlight whatever points I can from it. First off, let's begin with how shitty their music was when they're at the lake, where they've got their tunes blasting. I don't know what the hell they were listening to, but it sounded like crap.
It was not my style.
And one other thing, who the hell goes scuba diving in a lake? I mean, I don't see anyone else do that.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's so random. Because it just pops up in that one scene.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a tank and everything. I mean, okay. Anyways, as we go through towards the earlier stages of the movie, well, they get a flat tire and they know that the kids kind of did it, so the guy, he sees his kids kind of roaming around the town as they're driving around, and he seems to really want to have a strict talk with their parents, and he eventually notices their bikes parked outside their house, and he goes to, I guess, talk to the parents, and they've got the doors open and no one's really coming to the door when he's yelling hello and stuff, so he decides to go inside, which I think was a pretty terrible decision. It's just something I would never do. Like, I wouldn't start roaming around someone's house just because they're not coming to the door. I mean, you could just leave it alone, you could just leave. I mean, that was a pretty stupid situation to put himself in.
Yeah, I just keep thinking back to that one line he says. I'm not going to be boarded away by a bunch of 12-year-old kids. Like, dude, just go, just move. There's a big lake. Move to the other side. It's cool.
Yeah. Was it worth it?
Like I just that type of, I don't know if it's a pride or ego type thing, but just do it, dude. I don't think the girlfriend's gonna think any less of you because of that.
Yeah. These kids and their parents say, I mean, these types of people, they're fairly normal. I mean, in Australia, we essentially call these types of people bogans. So they're essentially, people who swear a lot. They might dress down quite a lot, and usually lower class people. And it's not necessarily that they're bad people. They're just really rough around the edges and maybe do a lot of stupid things. And obviously, things go too far in this movie, and they start doing things that are beyond just bad.
Yeah, it's interesting because toward the end of the movie, we get to see one of the main kid's fathers, and just seeing the way that father treats a kid, even just a little short scene. But I mean, there comes a point, and I think that's partially what this movie is. How much of how the kids became is their own doing. I mean, the upbringing that they may have had, falling into that type of hoodlum lifestyle. I mean, maybe it was one of the only possibilities they could have gotten. It's depressing, which is pretty much what this movie is. Especially, I think it's really interesting because the main character is a teacher. I don't know what, it's like pretty young kids that she was teaching, but just having a teacher have to deal with this type of scenario. And you can see the remorse after that one scene in which she was defining she thought she was defining herself. Speaking of which, I wonder what that kid was going to say. Like, hey, I'm sorry that we screwed, your vacation up.
I don't know what he would have said, but it's obviously he was going to not hurt her, at least in that situation. Who knows? He might have helped her get away or something. I
don't know if he would have had that type of bravery, to be honest, but it's a nice thought. Actually, another reminds me of another interesting aspect of this, which is between the kids, a sort of peer pressure or peer under. The main kid is the main guy behind this. The others are sort of not forced into it, but it's one of those situations like, hey, if these are the only friends I have, I might as well follow along, and that has repercussions, throughout the movie. And there are multiple times when different, kid characters don't really want to go through it this stuff, and it's just sort of interesting dynamics. And I mean, obviously the kids are horrible for doing what they're doing. Especially since they sort of instigated the whole thing to begin with. But I mean, it's just difficult. I do like to mention probably one of my favorite scenes is once the what's her name, Johnny, finds Steve and sort of drags him to this little small cabin. Then they sort of have to hide under the cabin in sort of like a marshy water type thing where the kids are up in the cabin, which is a pretty tense scene, especially when one of the kids breaks through the somewhat rotten wall.
You fat fuck.
Those accents crack me up. But especially because, that guy has so many open wounds, and then that water getting into this wound. I mean, he was screwed anyway, but that's just those are difficult wounds, and that's probably one of the hardest scenes for me, especially because I think both of them know that he may not make it.
Yeah. I can't recall who the actress is in this movie. I didn't actually look it up again, and this might be like not the right time to mention this sort of thing, but there's so many shots where they're showing her cleavage and boobies bouncing around, so I kind of appreciated that.
The question is, why is it not the right time to mention?
You didn't notice this? Like, I don't know if the dress she's wearing and everything else, they're just like kind of bouncing around.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the actress, but she was certainly an attractive woman. Well, for the most part, toward the end she was a bit messed up, but that's not really her doing.
You'd still hit it.
I'm not saying no.
The house that she ends up at the end seems to be the same house that they visited earlier in the film, so I'm not expecting her to have been thinking about that or remember that or anything when she does kind of go back and crash there or whatever she does there. But if she had kind of recalled, hey, this is a house where these kids were before, maybe I shouldn't go to this house.
Yeah, I think her idea was that as soon as she hits quote-unquote civilization, she'll be okay. Which is disappointing. I mean, talk about an ending that you just... I mean, it makes sense in context of the story, but you just hate to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Eden Lake, it's a tough movie to watch, but it's never boring. It's always got things going on, dislikable characters, but that's the actual point of the movie, I guess. So it does a really good job with that. Even though there's quite a bit of violence in the movie, I think the more disturbing thing is just the events in the film that happen rather than the actual violence itself. So, it's kind of impressive what they've done with technically so little. I think it's a solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, and I am actually going to concur with that rating in 8 out of 10. Eden Lake is I think it's a very solid movie. It's not like a whole lot of distractions. It's pretty much, hey, she's fighting for her life throughout this whole movie. And it's just a solid time. It's not the happiest movie. And I sort of wonder how many people went into this movie, jubilant and came out with their spirits crushed. But that's more of the power of it. So, yeah, I think an 8 out of 10 is pretty fair. And if for some reason you've not seen this movie, I would certainly recommend checking it out.
Yeah. If even for the bouncing booblers.
If that is indeed your thing, by all means, and whose thing isn't? Let's be honest.
That's right, you fat fuck.